Tonight I thought I'd talk about grace and law. So, Christianity tends to pit the two against one another. So we've got grace versus law. But actually, the two of them work together quite well. And one of the things about Christian theology is that it very much needs to have this contrast of grace versus law. And I thought I'd get into the book of Galatians, and I'm just, because of the immensity of this topic. I mean, there's been, over 1,000 years worth of meditation on the topic in both directions, in all kinds of directions. And mainly that grace being the highest and law being, the old, versus the new. And you get into the this replacement theology where, Christianity is replacing the Torah of Judaism. When actually, when Jesus came, he said, "I have not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law." So he's not abolishing the law, but he is showing people this is what it means to keep the law. You want to know what it means to keep the law? Look at Yeshua. Look at his life. You want to know what Jesus would do? What would Jesus do? What would Yeshua do? He would keep the Torah. And we see that in the writings of the, quote, New Testament. So, moving on to the discussion of law versus grace. Like I said, I'm just going to focus on one verse, and that verse today is Galatians 5, verse 18. And looking at it in the King James Version of the Bible, it simply says, "But if ye be led by the Spirit, ye are not under the law." And of course, this is a scripture that Christians use to say, hey, look, see, I am not under law, I am under grace. But the truth is that grace and law are not against one another. And in fact, if you are led by the Spirit, you will keep the law. Because the fruit of the Spirit produces everything that the law sets forth. So, basically, this is it in a nutshell. This scripture, the way in which it is translated has to do with the theology of the Christian church. Now, the literal translation of that verse from Greek to English is simply that. If you be led by the Spirit, ye are not under law. However, you have to look at the context that is written in, and you have to interpret what Paul is saying here. When Shaul wrote this, he was addressing the issue of circumcision amongst the Gentiles. Now, to show you what I mean, there is another translation that I found right here on my laptop. And you can go to crosswalk.com for this. I think I might just put the link up in the description for you. if you go in to crosswalk.com Bible search and you look up modern translations and type in Galatians 5:18 and select the translation called The Message. A little background on The Message, I'll put a link in there, but this was written by Eugene H. Peterson and published in segments from 1993 to 2002. He was the translator of the translation entitled The Message. It is a paraphrase of the original languages of the Holy Bible and crafted to present its tone, rhythm, events, and ideas in everyday language. The Message was written in order to recreate the spirit of the original language of Scripture, which was written in the street language of the day. Peterson notes that in the course of the project, he realized that this is exactly what he had been doing in his 35 years as a pastor, always looking for the English way to make the biblical text relevant to the conditions of the people. Now, I haven't read the Message Bible from cover to cover yet, so I couldn't tell you what my impressions are. I can only tell you what my impression is on this particular verse, which he tends to nail the correct translation. And if you look it up on crosswalk.com, Galatians 5:18, why don't you choose to be led by the Spirit and so escape the erratic compulsions of a law-dominated existence? So that's a little bit closer to the actual meaning of the translation. Now, I'm also going to read to you from another translation, which you can look up on crosswalk.com, and that is the Complete Jewish Bible, translation by David Stern, in Galatians 5, verse 18. But if you are led by the Spirit, then you are not in subjection to the system that results from perverting Torah into legalism. Okay? So, yes, I'm against legalism. And so are the Jewish people. If that is a great shock to some Christians, I wouldn't be surprised, because I was raised in an evangelical church, like the majority of Americans. I was raised to believe that the law was legalism. Come on, you can admit it. You can admit it. You were raised to believe that the law is legalism. But this is not the case with the Jewish people. So, what Paul is actually saying is, he's saying